Hi, it's Alan Cross, and we are at Rebel in Toronto on the water here, and I've got Jake from Greta Van Fleet. And you're going to really have to explain yourself to me here because you're a band with, what, 2 EPs?
Yes.
And you're playing 2 nights in Toronto, each night in front of 7,500 people, completely sold out. Who do you think you are?
I don't know. Who do you think you are? No, I have no idea how it happened that way. I suppose we've been touring now for about a year, mainly in the States and Europe. But this is our first time getting into Canada, and I suppose that there's many factors that could have persuaded that sort of audience to come in that amount of mass. And I think
what do you think it is? Because if we go back, we rewind about 4 years.
Radio. No,
That's good. See, now already you and I are getting along really well. But if you rewind 4 or 5 years and you look at the state of new rock, and we have a lot of people playing banjos and a lot of sort of woe is me stuff and a lot of stuff with mid-tempo synthesizer business. And then you guys come along a couple of years ago, and I mean the reaction was, holy crap, they're not making bands like you anymore, or they haven't made bands like you for a very long time, with the wailing singer and the big drums and the big guitars and all the rest of it. Why did you guys, or where did you guys come from when it came to that sound? Because you're certainly not a product of what was happening when you guys were formed.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with an important childhood with music. It's like there are 3 of us, our brothers in the band, and we grew up around a lot of our parents' vinyls. And it was a lot of that stuff, and we were kind of raised in a musically nurturing environment where it wasn't necessarily just music, but there was a lot of film and a lot of literature, and we had a lot of traditional music, lying around, and it was kind of
When
like
you say traditional, what do you mean?
like roots music, like blues that was Elmore James, Willie Dixon, Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, all the Kings, that, very early on American blues stuff. That wasn't necessarily, because in folk, like people like Arlo Guthrie and Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, John Denver.
So this was your mom and dad?
Yeah, a lot of that. I think that a lot of it was put there on purpose, being that it was traditional, that early on music, a lot of early American music. And it's like, it wasn't until like, I think about high school that we all started getting into what is, commonly known for is rock and roll, a lot of the British invasion and that sort of stuff. And it was like,
when you say British invasion, we're talking 60s British invasion.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, that we figured, it's like we came together and sort of started just organically playing around musically, and that's, it's just sort of what happened. I suppose that's a benefactor of our youthful ignorance, in the sense that we're not really, going for one sound or another, that it was something that sort of organically just kind of naturally happened.
I'm going to make a guess here, saying that if there had not been 3 brothers in the band who had grown up around this kind of music, right, that you wouldn't be what you are now.
Right.
You wouldn't say, because you all had the same, and 2 of you are twins, right? So you're all the same sort of age, and you all picked up on the same things at the same time.
Yeah, same life experiences, right, that we've shared, commonalities and things like that. And it's very easy to communicate, especially, just in general, but artistically, I think that we're on the same page a lot of the time, where it's like, well, what creatively has to happen here when we come to a juncture where we're deciding, well, what should the guitar be doing here? And I think we're all like, yeah, it should be doing this, or, it's like, as an example, but, that affects the live performance as well, because it may just take a glance at someone for them to know exactly what you're talking about or where you're going.
That's brothers.
Yeah, right.
Because you've grown up around each other, and you have all this. You have a secret language,
right?
You don't even know it. You have a secret language.
Body language too. Yeah. A lot of that.
So Frankenmuth,
yeah,
Michigan, not exactly the center of the world,
right?
How big is it?
It's about 5,000 population, 5,000.
Okay, again, just proving that you can come from absolutely anywhere.
Absolutely.
So what was it like growing up there?
It was interesting. It was a very romanticized thing, like that ideology, like Americana. There's like, it's like this small town and it's surrounded by farm fields. And so we kind of lived about 10, 15 minutes outside of town. sort of in the country. And you know, we would be playing in the fields, and you know, exploring the forests, and the many streams that flow through there in
So
a
you
river.
were free range kids.
Yeah, pretty much. We were just exploring around, but it was interesting, and then the fact that there wasn't particularly you know, an overwhelming music scene in that small town. There wasn't really much going on. I think there's more going on now than there was, but there wasn't anything to grab onto. There wasn't things around us influencing us other than pretty much what was, you know, on the radio, and then at that time, whatever was played going to school on the bus, and which was a lot of pop, I think. And it was like, you know, we'd rather, you know, we'd get home and go, this doesn't sound like the records that we were playing, and stuff like that. It was very interesting.
So you had this weird, I don't want to say weird, but this isolated musical environment.
Yeah.
So you were kind of allowed to grow unmolested as if you were in your own little petri dish, right?
Yeah.
So when did you realize that, wait a second, we got something going on here?
I don't know if we ever did or still do. No, I think it was. I should start where, you know, it was about sophomore year that there was I joined the jazz band because I think you know, it's been a while that I wanted to put something together musically, and I wanted to get a band together, and there was a new kid coming from outside of town who was playing drums for the jazz band, and so I sort of you know, recruited him to come and play, and we'd play, you know, in the garage at our house after school most often, and so, you know, we needed someone to sing, and you know, Josh started coming out, and you know, we'd grown up singing in the car and singing the records a lot and whatever, and he was always singing, so, you know, it was right that he would be brought in. And then we needed a bass player, so Sam never had played any bass, and he was probably around 13 or 14 at this point, and I think we tried to drag him into the garage. Every time he'd get home from school, he'd try to get up to one door, and he had this routine where he would go do his homework, and we would start interjecting, you know, and we'd pull him out to the garage and say, come on, play bass for us. So he started doing that and started playing bass, and it wasn't long after till Danny replaced the drummer at that point, who couldn't keep up. And I think we were all in that room, and with the loud amplifiers and you know, pretty loud drum kit in a small room, all cement. And I think Josh had to kind of get over that volume-wise, and, you know, there wasn't proper monitors and a PA system.
Does that explain his vocal technique?
Yeah, I think very much so. And I mean, a lot of the stuff that he was listening to, like Aretha Franklin's, a lot of that stuff was inspired by like early R&B female blues singers.
Because he's a belter. I mean,
yeah, he is. And I think he just at one point just pushed past the instruments and stuff and ramped up, and we all stopped playing, and we looked at each other and we're like, I think this is gonna work. I think there's something here, you know.
Sometimes technical limitations or impediments can result in something really cool. So
Right.
he couldn't be heard above you guys.
Right.
So he pushed himself into a completely different realm and ended up with this style that really sticks out today, because nobody's singing like Josh right now.
Right.
Nobody. I mean, we can go back to Chris Cornell. We can go back to Robert Plant.
Yeah.
And okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because did you guys have any Led Zeppelin records growing up in the house?
Yeah.
Okay.
We did.
You do sound an awful lot like you spent some times with Led Zeppelin records.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Yeah, we did.
And, you know, oldsters will notice it immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But I think young people who, you know, were born many years after Zeppelin broke up find you guys as fresh as old people found Led Zeppelin in 1968.
Right. Or as, you know, as the older people now find it as refreshing as a new rock band in this age. So
Yeah.
And then it's kind of new, I think, in many ways for our generation and our interpretation of rock and roll and what that is. So, you know, because I mean, that's another thing that I'd like to touch on too, is like we grew up around a lot of the old traditional music, and we do listen to a lot of modern music, and there are some great ones out there, like, you know, for like alternative stuff would be Fleet Foxes and, you know, some Mumford & Sons and Cage the Elephant. It kind of goes on there, and Black Keys, but it's almost to, you know, it's almost, in our opinions, our job to take, you know, those elements of what was that traditional music and how that evolved to become rock and roll, which is kind of a personification of all of the elements of traditional music, and that's kind of just pushing everything and amplifying it. and it's kind of, you know, we feel that it's our job to take it where it was or where it has, you know, conspired in different places and get it back to where maybe it was or where we want to take it and evolve it again further and try new things.
So basically you're performing an educational function. Because you're taking all these old influences and putting a really fresh coat of paint and a new spin on them for a new generation. Why do you think young people why do you think that we're seeing a renaissance right now in guitar rock after many years of just sort of softer stuff?
Yeah,
we're rocking again now.
Yeah,
Why?
I think it's interesting. I mean, as far as my perspective on it is that it's a thing of fascination that just sort of. I think it was a quest by a lot of the traditional guitar heroes, and it's something that hasn't been answered yet. You know, it's like still something that it's like there's still a lot to explore, and I think that as far as getting into things that were more electronic music, and that at some point it's like looking back at something that was more truthful and emotional, and I think it in the most traditional form, and it's like we can still feel that. I mean, it's very simple. It's very easy to determine whether someone's kind of lying to you or if something's been manufactured in any sense. And I think that a lot of what got me into listening to, you know, that music or what that music did for me, the blues and folk and things like that, is that it was pure emotion, and it was uncontrived, and it was truthful, and I wasn't being lied to. Like a lot of what's, you know, or arranged mathematically in it, you know, with
15 producers and 16 co-writers.
Exactly, to feel any bit of emotion. I don't think that you can manufacture emotion, so why try?